While the world was waiting for President Trump to subdue the Chinese dragon, something unexpected happened for the first time. Trump in Beijing, but not as the leader of the world, rather as someone just looking for a way out of the predicament he is facing today. So today, in this episode, we will reveal to you how China received the American president as an equal and how it set 4 red lines that cannot be crossed. And even more dangerously, how Iran took advantage of Trump's presence in China to turn the tables on him in the Strait of Hormuz with a single move. We'll cover all of this today, but after this break. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings, and welcome to another edition with us today, God willing, from the Opinion series, which we always dedicate to keeping up with the latest developments and updates of this global conflict that the Middle East is witnessing between Iran and the Epstein Alliance. Today, dear viewers, all eyes are naturally on the visit that President Trump is making to China, after many long months of waiting and also after many weeks of postponement and so on. Because of this war, Trump arrived in China accompanied by a large American delegation that includes politicians and economists. And of course, China gave him a grand and respectful welcome. But as expected, the reception had the character, or was based on the principle, of peer-to-peer relations. Because China truly showed in this reception that this guest is considered an equal. The strongest country in the world, so the other side, meaning China, has also become, in a sense, the strongest country in the world. President Xi Jinping spoke with Trump in a very sharp and forceful tone. Even though, if we look at things superficially, if we look at these pictures, the meeting and the talks, we might find that President Xi seems calm and pleasant and so on, but he was actually using a very decisive tone with Trump. He stressed that the Taiwan issue is the most important issue for China and for these US-China relations. Moreover, China warned Trump that not handling this issue properly would lead to a very dangerous situation. The two countries could slip into a direct conflict, meaning a direct war between the US and China, because these talks addressed the prospect of a direct conflict. Ancient Greece. The Chinese president discussed the Thucydides trap, where a rising power threatens a dominant superpower, potentially leading to war. This is a specific issue. It means it's inevitable, so it's clear. So it's clear that the Chinese president wanted from the beginning to define the key points of this visit or this reception. Even the Chinese embassy in America had set 4 red lines before this meeting. They said they cannot be crossed. For China, these are issues that China cannot compromise on at all, and these 4 issues were clearly defined. First, of course, is the island of Taiwan, which is considered Chinese territory. Second, regarding the issue of democracy and human rights within China. That is, China says that America cannot use or exploit this issue, the issue of democracy and human rights and so on, to put pressure on China and the Chinese leadership. The third issue is also the political system in China, which China says was determined by the people. So neither America nor any other country has the right to impose a particular political system on China and the Chinese people. The fourth issue is China's right to development, meaning this tremendous industrial and commercial progress that China is experiencing today. China says that America has no right to restrict China's development with such sanctions that America imposes unilaterally. So these are 4 issues or 4 red lines that China says it will never give up on. Therefore, China has defined the key points in its agenda. Then China asked Trump to clarify the American position on these 4 issues. China demanded that Trump not keep the American stance on these issues strategically ambiguous, meaning things need to be clarified today. It is clear that China has truly started to take advantage of this humiliating defeat that Trump suffered in the war with Iran. China is seizing the opportunity that comes with Trump visiting China this time, and he is weak and strategically defeated. I mean, while he is sinking in this Iranian quagmire, to the extent that America issued a statement today saying that China and America together agreed on the necessity of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open to ensure the free flow of energy. I mean, to the extent that the initial outcomes of this visit indicate. It suggests that Trump is almost ready to meet all of China's demands, to refrain from crossing these 4 lines set by China, and so on. What's strange, dear viewers, is that this American statement was completely different from the Chinese statement. The American statement said that President Xi made it clear that China is against the militarization of the Strait of Hormuz and against any attempt to impose fees on ships wanting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. That means from Iran's side, and even more than that. The American statement mentioned that China expressed a strong desire to buy oil from the United States in order to reduce its dependence on Iranian oil and on oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So, is China saying this, or is China agreeing with the United States? For example, Iran not possessing nuclear weapons, as stated in this statement as well, is very normal, considering that these are nuclear powers. I mean, no matter who its ally is in the region, it cannot accept or agree that this ally also possesses nuclear weapons like it does, or has a deterrent weapon like it does. It wants such weapons to be exclusively in its own possession. This matter is something that everyone understands today. But for China to say that it is against Iran's move to impose fees on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, or to say that it will buy American oil instead of Iranian oil, and this is very dangerous, basically means that it is helping America impose an economic blockade on Iran. This is strange. In fact, what's even stranger is that the Chinese statement was different from the American statement. It didn't mention these points at all. The Chinese statement did not refer to the Strait of Hormuz at all. It only stated that America and China discussed the situation in the Middle East, that's all. What was also strange, dear viewers, is that at the same time Trump arrived in China, Iran started allowing Chinese ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran said that this decision came at the request of China, after talks with the Chinese foreign minister, and based on negotiations that took place between China and Iran. In other words, they are saying or trying to say that the decision has nothing to do with the talks currently taking place between Trump and the Chinese president. But in reality, we find that the decision is related to this matter, and it is connected to what could be agreed upon in this matter. And I will explain to you why I say this. The oil that China buys from the Middle East, which is supposed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, is not only Iranian oil. Iranian oil, we can say, is just a small part of this oil. I mean, here we are talking about larger quantities coming from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and so on. Oil that could not pass through the Strait of Hormuz because of this Iranian closure. The only oil that was allowed to go to China was Iranian oil. So China was actually affected in this regard because it's a major industrial country with a very large population, so it needs huge amounts of oil. And China was demanding that Iran allow Chinese ships to pass, but Iran always responded that it was not possible, considering that these Chinese ships were transporting oil. Does that mean it comes from countries hostile to Iran and participating in this aggression against Iran? Even though China is actually an ally of Iran, and China is well aware of these American plans and knows how they are planning to encircle it on all fronts, and how they are planning to weaken these countries. That's the reality. A country that has strong relations with China. So despite all this, China is also against the closure of the Strait of Hormuz because it affects it in terms of energy and therefore industry. That's why Trump took the opportunity to get closer to China from this angle. He offered it American oil to compensate for the oil coming from foreign countries. Iran, of course, probably knew very well what was gonna happen. I mean, it caught on to this game. So, on the same day, it issued a decision allowing Chinese ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. as if it's sending a message to Trump about the talk of selling American oil. And this statement that was issued by America or by the White House about this visit will remain just a statement. We could say it's a shelf statement, just talk that China won't need at all. So the game is really very complicated. It's truly like a chess game. And now with this move, Iran may have really frustrated Trump as well. There were some strange things that happened today at the same time as this development. Today, Iran seized an American cargo ship. Even though it was sailing outside the Strait of Hormuz, it did not enter the Strait of Hormuz. It was in an area opposite the Emirati port of Fujairah, and specifically it happened in the territorial waters of the UAE. So pay close attention to this very important point. And this really confirms that Iran is now imposing a naval blockade on the UAE and actually controls the situation in the region. According to the map that the Revolutionary Guard published earlier, which we showed in one of the previous episodes, which specified, that is, the area that Iran closes off and prevents ships from passing through except with Iranian permission. Also, today there was the sinking of a cargo ship flying the Indian flag, following a sudden attack it was subjected to while in the Gulf of Oman, also outside the Strait of Hormuz. It was exactly off the coast of Oman, and it was heading from Somalia towards the UAE. If it weren't for the intervention of the Omani Coast Guard, the crew of this ship, which consists of 14 people, would have been lost as well, honestly. At the same time, we find that Iran came out with a completely different decision. It said that starting today, American weapons will not be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This means that the countries in the region, except for Saudi Arabia, which overlooks the Red Sea, the other countries in the region that have arms deals with America, and they are supposed to receive these weapons during the coming periods, but they will not get these weapons because they will not be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. So all of these were very rapid developments, all coming in their context, all of them come to achieve the goals and interests of one country. The biggest winner from all these developments is not Iran, not America, not Israel, and not any country in the region at all. The biggest winner is China, which is receiving Trump today. Because now, first of all, China has started to take everything it wants from America. According to the initial outcomes of Trump's visit, there is a big victory for China. They are maybe taking things they never dreamed of before. Secondly, it is the only country now whose ships have started to pass through the Strait of Hormuz and benefit from the region's oil. The third point is that it is also the only country that will increase its arms sales to the Gulf countries. American weapons will not reach the Gulf countries, and China will definitely compensate for that with arms deals with countries in the region. So the longer this conflict continues, the more China's influence will grow. China is the biggest winner from everything happening today. And these developments are truly what have changed the equation today. Just minutes after the American statement came out, in which America said that China would buy oil from the United States instead of from Iran, and the Iranian response that followed, as well as today's Iranian response with these events in the Strait of Hormuz, which you mentioned, the Strait. Even China came out to confirm that it would continue buying oil from Iran. So Iran's actions changed the equation in just a few minutes. It means they managed to turn the tables on Trump, even though he is present in the heart of Beijing today. It is clear, according to the statements of Iranian officials and project leaders, that they allowed Chinese ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but always, as usual, according to Iranian conditions. First, they say some of these ships, not all of them, some of these ships, meaning most likely they allowed the Chinese ships, those that transport Saudi or Iraqi oil, for example, while they will not allow those that transport oil from the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and so on. This is a very important point. This means Iran is allowed to continue imposing this closure on the Strait of Hormuz and to continue this maritime blockade on these countries, meaning it can keep using this card, the card of the Strait of Hormuz. Whereas, if we talk about Iraq, for example, it is a friendly country to Iran. its relationship is balanced, and the export of Iraqi oil to China will not affect Iran or the situation that Iran imposes in the region. And in the Strait of Hormuz, if we also talk about Saudi Arabia, we find that the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran has perhaps started to move toward a historic and unprecedented rapprochement. We talked about this earlier. It means that Saudi Arabia is completely convinced that there is no point in confronting Iran and that it is necessary to win Iran over. Instead of declaring hostility toward Iran, Iran should be won over. This country, Iran, should become a new security partner for it. Today, there is very significant reports coming from diplomatic sources. What does it say? It says that Saudi Arabia is now considering a plan to sign a non-aggression pact with whom? With Iran? Of course, it won't be an alliance agreement. It won't be a major partnership agreement with Iran or a strategic partnership with Iran, but it will be a non-aggression pact. And having this agreement with Iran will allow Saudi Arabia to dispel these fears about Iran, and it will make it so they don't need America. I mean, from this side, it's final, and therefore it's a point that will be overcome. This is exactly what Iran wants. This is exactly what Iran has always talked about, saying that security in the region should be established without any foreign party. So, there are indicators confirming that there are challenges. And this rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, this rapprochement is now close at hand. And therefore, Iran might allow Saudi oil to be exported to China. And here, of course, we can't forget that the reconciliation that took place earlier between Iran and Saudi Arabia was mediated by China, so things are somewhat close. Another thing is that when Iran said it would allow some Chinese ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, what does this also mean? After what? Of course, after paying the transit fees. Meaning that Iran did not give up anything at all, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz remains the same. So what did it do? It only used a certain strategy to turn the tables on Trump and break any oil agreement between China and America. Iran, in fact, is making concessions and acting with great intelligence in this conflict. It knows exactly what capabilities it has. It knows what the opponent has, what the opponent aspires to, and it moves like a chess game, following calculated moves and plans. That's why it is still achieving these political and military victories today. This was just one day after Trump's visit to China began. We just have to wait and see how things will develop, what the final outcomes of this visit will be in the next few hours, specifically tomorrow. Of course, we will come back to this, God willing. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.